Hello once again, this is Skip, Victor Echo 6, Bravo Golf Tango. Like the title says, this is going to be something completely different. No moon bounce equipment in this one. It's hard to believe, but it was at least 30 years ago last time I did any teletype or RTTY stuff at all. Back then I had a ham shack room about 12 feet by 12 feet, and I had a Model 19, a Model 15, and a Model 32 teletype machines in that little room. It was really something to see and hear. When I got the Model 28 teletype machine, I had to get rid of the 32 because I just didn't have enough room. This is the old ham shack I used to use. The rack on the far left was the amplifiers. One in the middle was a pair of 813 tubes that I used on 20 meters for a teletype. It was quite a workhorse. This is the old rack I used for the teletype control. The demodulator is in the middle there with a small scope in the center. You'll be seeing that later. Anyways, it was a lot of fun. So now back 30 years ahead, all these years I kept this old Model 28 teletype. It's been sitting for almost 30 years and never been turned on. And every time I walked by, it would beckon at me, please start me up. What got me going on this crazy old thing was watching Daniel K6YIC on YouTube with all his fantastic Navy teletype equipment. I contacted him and talked to him, and he said, yeah, there's still guys out there using these old things, so the bug bit. I dragged the old machine into the ham shack and wiped some of the dirt off the front of it. It was actually very clean inside. I was kind of surprised for sitting there for 30 years, roughly. And then I had to figure out how the wires hooked up in the back. I used to have a schematic for it, but I lost it. But luckily, I still had some of my old notes laying around. I threw a little oil in the motor and oiled up all the felts I could see and plugged it in. And to my surprise, the stupid thing fired right up. I shorted out the two loop wires for the control loop, and she locked right up, and I could type locally on the keyboard. Boy, what a neat sound. And oh, how I had missed that old smell of oil and electrical mixed together. Well, now that the old machine's running, I guess the next step is to get the demodulator running if I'm going to actually try and receive something. So this is my old teletype demodulator with auto start and a small scope for tuning. This is scary because, oh man, it also had 30 years of grunge on it. When I built this thing way back when, I built it in a modular design. I was hung up on having boards plug into slots and things like this, which was good because the board sat vertically and it didn't get all that dirty. I took the chassis out into the garage and blew it out with an air hose and cleaned up as best I could. It came out pretty good, actually. I had to do the same with the UART speed control, or electronic gear shift, if you want to call it that. It was covered in 30 years of scunge also, so I cleaned them all up. Now the fun part started was to hook this thing up and see if it fires up. You'd think I'd have it marked obviously enough, but I couldn't make sense of some of it. And luckily, I still had my old schematic, but I still had to take things apart to troubleshoot it and try and figure out what was going where. And it took a couple hours. Like I said, it took a couple hours. I finally got it all wired together, and things started coming to life. It really brought back old memories. First thing I needed was a signal source of some kind. One thing Daniel told me about was that there was live news feeds on the internet, and they were transmitting at 170 hertz shift at 60 words a minute, so it was perfect. I couldn't believe that one. The audio line I'm using is plugged into the headphone jack of the speakers, so I unplugged it here so you could hear the tones. Unreal. So here's the audio going into the demodulator. You can see the mark and space tones being tuned on the small CRT on the front of the panel. I was kind of amazed when I built this thing. I even had jacks on the back to hook up an external scope. So you can, I'll swing the camera up to the top there and you'll see the mark and space tones on the bigger display. Unbelievable what I did back then. So here's the setup. Here's the demodulator taking in the audio tones, and you can still see the display pulsing the mark and space. So the signal is sent from the demodulator over to the UART gear shifter. This circuit buffers up the signal and sends it out to the teletype, which is geared for 100 words a minute. And from the UART circuit, it's sent at 100 words a minute down the cable, across the floor, and up to the old 28 machine, which is just standing by, waiting to start hammering. So that's all there is for the flashback to my youth. I never actually imagined that this thing would ever come back together and work as well as it is. First go at it like this. I'm just totally blown away. The old Model 28 looks kind of right at home, parked beside the old Hammond 19-inch racks and all the rack handles. You can't beat that look. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. 73s for now. This is from Skep V6 Bravo Golf Tango.